So, welcome to the third video for this. And this part, we're just going to kind of explore some of this little simple app that we created called Hello World. And one thing I didn't mention in the prior one, we didn't have to do anything as far as having the text Hello World show up. When you generate an app in Android Studio, especially on some of these basic ones, it goes ahead and creates that. So that's not something that we had to do. It went ahead and created it for us. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and click on the text over here. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to expand app just so we can talk about some of this stuff here. And what I'm going to do, actually, main activity. Let's look at this here. So when you generate this, when we did this, just the empty activity, it only generated really one class or one method in here. Some of those others that you created will create several methods, but for this one, it just did this one. And this is the most important method you will have. It's the onCreate. And this one, you have to have this method inside any application that you create. And this is a method it's invoked one time. And so anything you want to instantiate, such as like variables or arrays, you'll need to do that in this part. And then any other methods you want to create, like menu, stuff like that, you will add them in here. Okay. And again, mentioning, do not delete this onCreate method, because you have to have this, because this is basically what kicks off your program. Now, talking about this override right here. The override isn't really necessary, and we can get rid of it. However, and if you get rid of it, it doesn't really hurt anything, but it does serve a purpose. And one thing is to show you, for example, I'm going to go in here and this onCreate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to
backspace over the C, and I'm going to change the uppercase C to a lowercase. Okay.
So now you'll see the override has a red squiggly. So what that means is that this method does not override method from its superclass. It doesn't recognize this method. It doesn't know what to do with it. So therefore, if I tried to run it, it would kind of be lost. So by leaving this override part in it, it does kind of flag if you have issues. So if I go back in here and I then backspace over the C, put back into capital, it now fixes that error. So that's one thing you want to make sure of that you do, is that you have the onCreate. Make sure you spell things correctly and leave the override in there. Like I said, it doesn't hurt anything if you do that. So, okay, so I wanted to show you that. The other thing is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to expand res, because there's a few things in here I want to talk about. One is when I open up layout, you can see activity main XML. So the main activity Java, again, this is the part that has your main method, which is your create. But then when you go over to the activity main XML, I'm going to reduce the preview. This is the actual not JCL, but XML that controls your app. As this is where you go in, you put in any fields that you're going to have display on your app and any kind of control like that. Right now all we have is the hello world that shows up when I pull up the preview. So this is where all of that XML goes. So this is what is called by the main activity. And just want to make sure I cover everything here. I think I mentioned over here that this preview, it's not really an emulator. We will get to that later. This just kind of shows you as we make changes on that. The other thing I want to show you is this MIP map, because talking about the icon that you'll see on the emulator when it actually puts it on there, I'm going to go in here and expand these. So looking at these, if I actually go double click on one of these, you can see the little icons, and these are different sizes based on the number of pixels. So if I double click on this one, it's a little bit bigger. This one gets bigger, and this is as you have a higher resolution. Matter of fact, to see these, I'm going to go over to my File Explorer, because you'll see we've got the map. We have all of these little icons. So if I go over to my folder, and then, so here is my Hello Summers. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go into App. And then I'm going to go into Source, Main, Res. And then when I get down here, here are those little icons. And you can see that they pretty much match up with what we have over here, except over here it breaks them into, you have the round ones, and then you have just the square ones. But this way you can see the ones that you have in here. Now, one thing you can do is, let's say that you want to create a different icon. So if I go in here and I right click on this one, click on properties, and then show the details, you can see it's a 72 by 72 pixels. So if you're wanting one for, say, a low resolution app, this is the kind of, you need to make sure it was set up as a 72 by 72 on the pixels and all of that. And once you created that, you could actually drop it into one of these folders to pick it up on that. So if you don't like the particular one that it gave you on this, you could actually create your own, and it would pull it in. The other thing too is when I go in here and I look at up here in the manifest, and I double click on this, you can see that the icon, the map IC launcher, this is where it actually pulls these in. So if I click on this, you can see here are the different ones, and it's going to pull it in based on the resolution of the app that it's on. Android actually takes care of that for you. You don't have to figure that out. It'll look at the resolution, and it will go and pull the right icon that you have in here based on the resolution for that. So I think hopefully that makes sense on all of that. Let me go next into values. Values, here is where you can set up your particular values, such as, you see there's one for colors, there's one for strings. So I want to show you something right here. I'm going to go ahead and go into strings. I'm going to open this up. And right now, the only string that you have is app name. And it says Hello Summers. And this app name is actually used over here in the manifest. So if I go over here and I'll look at the application, and then I put my pointer over Hello Summers or the label, you see where it says @string app name? That is what is defined in this strings XML. Now over here in the activity, I'm going to go look at it. And I'm getting too many things open here. I'm going to go ahead and close down the manifest and close these down. I just have too many things open. Okay, so under the activity main, you can see right now that hello world, right now it is a literal. So if I look at this text, it says hello world. So if I want to change it, and this really isn't a good way to do it. So if I go in here, I could change this to say hello John, and it will actually change it over here. But it's not really good programming. You see right here, it says hard-coded string hello John should use the string resource name. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over into strings, and I'm going to create a string to use in here as opposed to just typing in a literal. So if you don't have the strings open, I'm going to go up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new variable. So I'm going to hit enter, string name equals, and what I'm going to put in here is I'm just going to put in hello underscore world. And now I'm going to actually put in what I want it to show. So I'm going to type in hello world exclamation. So now I've created a variable or a string for this. So I'm going to go back to my activity main. And what I'm going to do is on this, instead of having a literal, I'm actually going to highlight this. And I'm going to replace this literal with that new string I created. So I'm going to put in at string. And you see once you do this, it starts popping up. Well, one, I've got two strings defined. One is the app name, which is what's used in the manifest. But the other is this hello world, which is the new one I just created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on it. So now I've put that value in there. So you can see where it says hello world. So if I go over here to my strings and I change what I have in here to say hello world, whatever, and go back into my activity main, you can see over here where it changed it to hello world, whatever. The other thing I want to do while I'm in here is I want to go ahead and change the size of this hello world. So I'm going to go over here. I'm in my text view. I'm going to hit enter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Android. Actually, the first thing, instead of doing that, I'm going to show you a different way. So one thing, you need to make sure that you are in the design view. So down here at the bottom, you have text view, which shows your XML. And what I want to do is I want to change the size of this. I'm going to go into design. And when I'm in there, I'm going to click on hello world, whatever. I'll set that up as a string. And when I do that, you should see attributes. If you don't see it, it just means that it's closed down. So like if you're not seeing it, you should see attributes over here. I'm going to click on it. And let me make this a little bit bigger. So what I want to do is I want to make the font size a little bit bigger. So text size, I'm going to go down here. And right now it's a 14 SP. And what I want to do is I want to change this. And you'll notice there's SP. We'll also talk about DP. I will actually get to that in a different video. But what I want to do right now is I want to change this to an 18 SP. So I'm going to click on that. And you'll notice that it changed it to that size. And you can adjust it over here however you want. But now what I want you to see is if I go over here to text, you'll see now that it added a new line of code where it says Android text size equals 18. So if I want to go change this, let's say I want to change it to 24. Then I can change it in here. I don't necessarily have to go over the attribute to make those changes. I can actually make those changes in here. So we'll do some other things when we get into, like for colors. Like right now, this is kind of boring. I'd like to change it to maybe some different colors, but I want to keep these videos kind of short just because it takes so long to render them. So I'm going to stop at this point because I think we've got that. I think you kind of understand the values. You see colors, that's the one we'll talk about later. So at this point, I will end this and I will catch you on the next video.